It didn't happen at a celebration. No Christmas tree, no candlelit anniversary toast, no smiling snapsh asterisk ts destined for social media. Just dinner. A regular family dinner, if you could call it that. Rented house. Temporary space. Too many people and not enough reason to pretend we liked each other anymore. Claire had booked it weeks in advance. A house just outside Portland, nestled in that forested nowhere between suburb and wilderness. She called it a neutral ground. I should have known what that meant. She meant a place where no one had to feel like a guest. Not her daughters. Not me. Not their father if he happened to show up, which, thank God, he didn't. But his absence didn't stop the night from burning down. There were 17 of us around the long table. I counted. I always count when I feel like I don't belong somewhere. Claire's sister and her husband. Her parents. A few scattered cousins. 2 of her co-workers from the hospital. The ones who always call her the strong one. As if that were a compliment. The girls, of course, Haley and Madison, sitting opposite me, flanked by their boyfriends, both of whom I was meeting for the first time. Claire sat at the head of the table, the seat she always takes when she wants to remind people who arranged the event. It started like any other forced gathering. Obligatory wine. Small talk that died in shallow water. Jokes that circled like vultures over a carcass. I spent the first hour in my usual role, pouring drinks, fetching extra forks, carving meat I didn't want. You play your part long enough, it becomes muscle memory. No one notices the man who keeps the glasses full. Until they do. Until they decide to make it clear he's not needed anymore. It happened between the mashed potatoes and the salad Claire insisted on serving warm. Haley put down her fork. Madison leaned back in her chair. Neither raised their voice. Neither made a scene. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry. It was worse than that. From now on, any important decisions will be made by our real father, Haley said. Madison nodded. We've already talked to him about it. He agrees. And just like that, I was erased. Like a sentence crossed out in pencil. No one gasped. No shouting followed. There was no dramatic fallout. Just a few awkward coughs. An uptight cousin pretending to notice a stain on his napkin. The tension was sharp enough to taste, but no one dared acknowledge it. The statement had landed, and it stuck. I turned to Claire. Slowly, carefully, like a man bracing for a verdict. She didn't blink. She didn't laugh it off. She didn't say it was inappropriate or poorly timed or not quite what you meant, girls. She nodded. And then she said the words I won't forget until the day I die. You shouldn't interfere. I don't want you ruining the evening. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. She said it the way someone says, pass the salt. I looked at her for a long time after that. Long enough that she finally turned away. I wanted to speak. I wanted to say something. Anything. But my mouth didn't open. Because deep down, I think I already knew the truth. I wasn't shocked. Not really. Just confirmed. They'd had this conversation already, without me. Decided who mattered and who didn't. Who deserved a seat at the table, and who was just filling space. What cut the deepest wasn't the girls' declaration. They were Claire's daughters, loyal to blood. Even if blood had abandoned them. What cut was her silence. Her nod. The way she leaned back and sipped her wine like the decision was final. She didn't even look uncomfortable. The laugh that followed. Not from her, but from someone, I couldn't tell who, was light and awkward. It filled the silence just enough to keep the moment from exploding. But it was enough. Enough to seal it. Enough to mark the shift. The laughter was short, a reflex more than amusement, but it was the sound of the crowd moving on. Like I had already been written out of the script, and no one had told me I wasn't in the next scene. I didn't speak for the rest of the dinner. I listened. I nodded when appropriate. I passed the wine, cleared plates, even complimented the roast I had cooked myself. But my body wasn't at the table anymore. I had already left. Left the moment they drew the line and pointed to it. Not our father. Not the decision-maker. Not needed. I glanced across the table more than once. Not one of them met my eyes. Madison's boyfriend avoided my gaze entirely, either out of embarrassment or because he agreed. Haley smirked once, just faintly, like she'd won something. Claire didn't smirk. She didn't cry either. She just moved on. She kept the dinner rolling, changed the topic, asked someone about their vacation plans, made a joke about the Airbnb's thermostat, controlled the tone as always. That was Claire's specialty. Managing atmospheres, as if tension could be negotiated the way nurses negotiated pain medication. One dose at a time, just enough to make it tolerable. She had found a way to cut me out without making a mess. That was the cruelest part. After dessert, people began filtering out to the deck, pretending to admire the view even though it was pitch black outside. I stayed back to clear the dishes. Not because I wanted to, because I needed something to do with my hands. Something that didn't involve throwing the wine glasses into the fireplace. Claire came into the kitchen once, brushed past me like we were co-workers cleaning up after a work potluck. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say sorry. She adjusted the stack of plates in my hand and said, "Don't forget the ones from the kids' table." The kids' table. I had built that table. Hauled it out of the garage with splinters digging into my palms. Carried it down the rental house's uneven back steps. Scrubbed it clean because the surface was sticky with old candle wax. I did it because I thought it would matter, because I thought making space for people meant something. I thought showing up counted. But showing up doesn't mean a thing when you've already been voted out of relevance. I left before anyone noticed. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't slam the door. Just left. Quietly. The way you leave a job after being laid off but told you can stay until the end of the week. A kindness that only makes the humiliation deeper. I remember the air outside was cold, sharper than it had any right to be in spring. I sat in my truck for a long time with the engine off. The house glowed behind me, silhouettes moving past windows. The sounds of laughter. Music playing low from someone's phone. Claire's voice rising once, giving instructions. The family continued, with or without me. No one called to ask where I went. And Claire never texted to check in. That was when I understood what this really was. Not an emotional outburst, not a misunderstanding, not a drunken lapse in judgment. It was a decision, a reorganization of power. Quiet, final coup. They had held the meeting, cast the vote, decided what I was worth. And Claire, the woman I married, the one I shared a mortgage with, the one I defended against her ex-husband's manipulations, had been in that meeting. Maybe not literally, but in spirit. She had been there when they planned it, and she had nodded when the vote was cast. I wasn't humiliated. That word's too small. I was made irrelevant. Publicly, systematically, and politely. That was the real betrayal. Not the girl's words. I expected that, eventually. It was Claire's approval. Her willingness to keep the dinner intact instead of the family. Her choice to protect the table's mood instead of the man who built it. And so I sat in the dark, hands on the wheel, letting the engine stay cold, letting myself feel every inch of it. That's when I knew. They didn't just remove me from the conversation. They removed me from the family. And no one flinched. I didn't argue. That's the part people never believe. They expect shouting, plates breaking, a man clawing for relevance at the table he paid for. They imagine raised voices, accusations, a final plea for acknowledgement. There was none of that. I finished my dinner. I chewed slowly, deliberately, tasting nothing. I nodded once when someone asked if I wanted more wine. I said thank you to the host whose house I had helped pay for without my name ever being mentioned. I folded my napkin. I pushed my chair in. Then I stood. No announcement. No dramatic pause. Just a simple movement that felt heavier than any argument I could have started. Claire didn't look at me. The girls didn't stop talking. The table absorbed my absence the way it had already absorbed my irrelevance. I said goodbye to no one. When people draw boundaries that clean, arguing is pointless. You don't negotiate after the vote has already passed. You don't beg for a role after the script has been finalized. I walked out into the night with something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. The drive home was quiet. No music. No phone calls. No angry thoughts looping in my head. Just the steady hum of tires on asphalt and the strange calm that follows a decision you didn't know you were waiting to make. I didn't feel betrayed in the car. I felt finished. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was close to midnight. The house was dark, empty, silent in a way it had never been when I lived inside it emotionally. I locked the door behind me and stood there for a moment, hands still on the deadbolt, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No laughter. No television murmuring in the background. Just space. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sat at the table alone. The same table where years of receipts, permission slips, and quiet sacrifices had been signed without applause. The surface was scratched from homework sessions and hurried dinners. I ran my thumb along one of the grooves and finally asked myself the question I had avoided for too long. What exactly was I still supporting? I didn't open the laptop out of anger. That's important. Anger is reckless. Anger makes mistakes. Anger slams doors and sends messages you regret in the morning. What I felt was not anger. It was accounting. I opened the laptop because systems tell the truth when people don't. Accounts, auto payments, contracts, school portals, insurance dashboards, subscription lists that had grown quietly over years, unchecked, unquestioned. All the invisible machinery that keeps a household running without applause. Everything was there. Tuition portals saved under my email. Payment confirmations with my name attached. Medical plans listing dependents who no longer acknowledged my authority. Streaming services, phone plans, extracurricular fees, cloud storage for devices I wasn't allowed to discipline. It was all running because I never asked unnecessary questions. Because I believed responsibility earned respect. I was wrong. I scrolled slowly, not rushing, not shaking, just observing a structure that rested on one signature, one login, one assumption, that I would always be there. The girls had made their decision out loud. Now I was looking at mine in silence. I didn't cancel everything at once. That would have been emotional, sloppy. I paused, reviewed, marked what was essential to me versus what existed purely out of habit, out of obligation that had never been agreed upon, only assumed. I closed some tabs, left others open. Not tonight. Tonight wasn't about action. It was about understanding the full shape of what I had been carrying. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. The house didn't feel heavy, felt honest. For the first time in years, there was no one to perform for. No role to maintain, no illusion to protect, just me, and the quiet certainty that when someone removes your voice, they also remove your consent. I shut the laptop gently. Tomorrow would come soon enough, and when it did, I would not argue then either. Because the moment they decided I shouldn't interfere, they also decided I shouldn't sustain what no longer included me. That wasn't revenge. That was alignment. By 6:30 a.m., the house was still asleep. It always was by then. Haley and Madison rarely surfaced before 9, unless it was for something they wanted. Claire would usually rise around 7, claim she couldn't sleep past the sunrise, then scroll her phone in silence until someone needed her. That morning, though, there was nothing to interrupt the quiet, and I let it stretch. I made coffee, black, no sugar, the way I used to drink it before compromise. Before softness became expected. Before mornings became a performance. Outside, the street was wet from an overnight drizzle. Light fog rolled off the lawn like breath from something sleeping. The neighborhood hadn't stirred yet. The world itself seemed to be waiting for something to snap. But inside, only quiet. I opened the laptop again. Not with fury. Not with urgency. Just with the same calm I had felt the night before. I sat at the kitchen table. That table again. The one that had once been an altar to family routines. Now just a slab of wood marked by heat rings and forgotten respect. First, the school payment portal. One login. One cancellation. Haley's tuition for spring semester. Paused. Not deleted. Not disrupted. Just paused. A button click. A simple message. Payment has been suspended. Please contact the account holder. It almost made me laugh how casual the language was. How easy it was to stop something that had cost me $10,000 a semester and never earned me a single thank you. Next, Madison's extracurriculars. Dance classes, photography workshops, the internship she only showed up to twice but that I still paid the fees for because connections matter. All suspended. Emails sent to the coordinators. Please remove me as the billing contact. Her biological father will be handling payments moving forward. Then came the smaller cuts. Streaming services they used but never paid for. The shared Amazon account. The Spotify premium plan that Madison used to host her themed birthday playlists. The cloud storage for their phones, packed with photos they wouldn't let me see. Each one, canceled, suspended, removed, by 8 a.m. My coffee was cold, but the system was quiet. No alarms, no shouting, no accusations. Not yet. Just the mechanical stillness that comes after a storm, when the power is still technically on, but no one has realized the wires have been severed. At 8:15, Claire came downstairs. She looked tired. Her robe hung loose. Her phone was in her hand, already lit up with notifications. She barely glanced at me, just walked past, muttering something about being out of oat milk. She didn't notice the laptop. Or maybe she did and chose not to ask. She made tea, sat down, scrolled. 5 minutes later, she frowned. A pause. Then a longer stare at her phone. Then nothing. She didn't ask. Not yet. Not then. Maybe she was waiting for a second confirmation. A message from the school. An alert from the credit card company. Something more concrete than suspicion. That was the thing about Claire. She never asked first. She waited until the evidence was overwhelming. Until denial would make her look foolish. She wasn't the kind of woman who met confrontation head-on. She preferred to manage fallout. By 9 a.m., the girls were awake. Haley was the first to notice. "Why can't I log into my school account?" she called from upstairs, her voice sharp, but not panicked. Yet, it's saying something about payment issues. Claire didn't respond. Madison followed a moment later. "Dad's Netflix isn't working. Dad." She always called me that when she needed something. Not Michael. Not him. Just Dad, the placeholder title, the one that came with expectations but no affection. I didn't reply. Claire finally looked up from her phone. "That's weird," she said. Soft, controlled, still playing dumb. It wasn't until noon that the questions turned into confusion. Madison came down with her laptop, held it out like it had betrayed her. "Why is my internship access suspended?" They emailed me saying the payment bounced. Haley was pacing now, on and off the phone. "They won't let me register for classes until the portal's active again. It says the account holder has to authorize the payment." Claire stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, not looking at me. Her lips were pressed so tight they'd lost their color. Still, no one asked me directly. They spoke around me. That was the moment I understood something with absolute clarity. They weren't confused because something stopped working. They were confused because they believed nothing ever would. They thought the system was permanent, because I had never let it break before. They thought they could remove my authority but keep my utility. That they could redraw the family structure without redrawing the budget. That love wasn't necessary, only consistency. They were wrong. By 1 p.m., I was in the garage, tools in hand, organizing shelves I had neglected for years because I was too busy working to afford other people's futures. The sound of rubber soles pacing upstairs faded in and out. Voices, raised, but not panicked. I knew what stage they were in, glitch, not consequence. They thought this was an error, a blip, something they could reset. Let them think that. Let them live in the silence for a while. It wasn't until later, maybe 3:30, that Claire finally stepped into the garage. She didn't knock, didn't call for me, just stood there, leaning against the doorway like she used to when things were good. When she used to say she loved the way I worked with my hands. Before those hands became expected. Before they became tools instead of gestures. She spoke carefully. "There seems to be some issue with the tuition portal," she said. I kept sorting. Didn't turn around. "Is that so?" Her voice tightened. Haley can't register. She's upset. I'm sure she is. Pause. She said it says the payment holder suspended the account. I finally turned. I did. That was the moment she blinked. The first real flicker. The first acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, the boundaries weren't one-sided anymore. You paused it? She asked, as if hearing the words spoken aloud would make them make sense. Yes. A longer pause. Why? She said it like a person asking why the sun didn't rise. I set down the wrench. Because I was told not to interfere. Claire's face twisted slightly. That wasn't what they... I cut her off. It's exactly what they said. And you agreed. They were emotional. No, I said. They were calm, direct, prepared. And so are my decisions now. She stepped into the room, crossing her arms. Her robe was gone now. She was dressed, composed, back in control. You can't just stop paying without warning. I can, I said. And I did. Don't be like this. Like what? Like someone who finally heard the truth? Like someone who believed people when they told him what he was worth? She stared at me, and for the first time in years I didn't look away. I didn't explain. I didn't comfort. I didn't soften the blow. Because the blow had already been dealt to me. This wasn't punishment. This was transfer of responsibility. If the real father makes the decisions, then the real father should bear the weight. It's only fair. By evening, the air had shifted. No shouting. No meltdown. Just tension. Palpable. Like a pressure change before a storm. Dinner was quiet. No one complained, but no one thanked me either. Haley picked at her food. Madison scrolled her phone under the table. Claire ate without tasting. The house had always been full of noise. Music, requests, demands, questions, complaints. That night it was calm. Not empty, calm. The first wave of silence had landed. And it wasn't loud. It was a slow, deliberate unraveling of a structure that had once depended on me. Silently, entirely, without ever admitting it. And now, they were beginning to hear the sound of what they had taken for granted. Silence doesn't make announcements. It just arrives. By evening, no one asked what had changed. That was the most telling part. Not the silence. Not the nervous glances. But the refusal to confront it directly. Because deep down, they already knew. Claire cooked. Madison set the table. Haley sulked in the hallway until called. And even then, she walked in like she was stepping into enemy territory. I sat at the head of the table that night. Not because I wanted to, because it was my seat. Because I had never stopped showing up, even when the people around me made it clear I wasn't invited to my own role. We ate in silence. Claire passed the salt without speaking. Haley stabbed at her pasta like the noodles had insulted her. Madison opened her mouth twice, as if to say something, but closed it again both times. No one asked what I had done. No one said thank you for dinner. No one even looked directly at me. It was like I was made of glass, present but untouchable. And I let it happen, not to punish them, but to study them. The imbalance was finally visible. For years it had lived quietly beneath the surface, under gestures, under effort, under routine. An invisible system where I gave and gave and gave, and in return, received only expectation. Not warmth, not loyalty, just assumption. Assumption that I would always be there, that I would always pay, that I would always show up, no matter how unwelcome they made me feel. That evening the air had changed, but not because of anything dramatic. Not because I made a scene, just the opposite, because I made none, and they didn't know how to respond. Claire cleared her throat once, halfway through dinner. I think we need to talk soon. All of us. I nodded, didn't say a word. She didn't press. After the plates were cleared, I went into the living room and sat with my laptop. Not to work, not to browse, just to let it be known. I was here, not retreating, not sulking, just still, quiet, watching. That night, the girls didn't ask for anything. No rides, no passwords, no last minute, can you transfer $40 real quick? Texts. They were waiting for me to resume. waiting for the rhythm to return. But I had stopped moving, stopped carrying, stopped fixing, and nothing collapsed. That was the truth no one wanted to say aloud. The house didn't fall apart when I stopped. It just slowed, softened, went still. By 10:30 p.m. the rooms were dim. Claire came downstairs again. She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching me. Her voice was low, careful. "They're confused," she said. "So was I," I replied. She hesitated. "It's not that they don't care." I looked up at her. "Yes, it is." She blinked. "They don't care, Claire. They don't respect me. They've made that clear. And now I'm simply agreeing with them." Her shoulders fell slightly. "So what happens now?" I shut the laptop slowly. "That depends on them." She didn't speak again that night, just turned and walked up the stairs, her footsteps softer than usual, as if she understood, finally, what kind of threshold had been crossed. The next morning, no one asked for breakfast. The day passed like fog, slow, without event. I went to the hardware store, fixed the drawer that had been sticking in the hallway. Not for them. For me. Because I still live here. Because the house still matters to me, even if the people inside it are starting to resemble strangers. At 4 p.m. Haley knocked on the office door. A small knock, almost reluctant. I looked up. She didn't enter. "I can't register until someone pays," she said. Not angry, not snide, just flat. Informational. "I know." Another pause. "They're saying it needs to be paid by Friday." "I saw the notice," I said. "Are you going to pay it?" "No." Silence. Then a whisper, almost too soft to hear. "Why not?" I met her eyes. "Because you said I shouldn't interfere." And I shut the door gently. She didn't knock again. That evening, Claire tried again. She waited until the girls were upstairs, then came and sat across from me at the kitchen table. The one we had bought together 6 years ago. The one we had once made Sunday pancakes on. The one where we whispered late-night plans while the girls slept. She looked tired. "They're scared," she said. "They don't show it, but they are." "I was scared too," I said. Every time I asked myself how long I could keep going like this. Every time I wondered what would happen if I stopped. Claire was quiet for a long time. "They don't have anyone else," she said finally. "They do," I corrected her. "They have a father. One they prefer. One they said should make the decisions. That means they have him. You know he won't pay. Then they should have thought about that before they chose him over me." That was the first time I saw something crack behind her eyes. Not anger, not sadness. Something worse. Recognition. She nodded. Once. Very slowly. "They didn't mean to hurt you. They meant to push me out," I said. "And they succeeded." She looked down at her hands. "I don't know how to fix this." "I don't think you can." The silence sat between us like a fourth chair. One that belonged to the man I had been. The one she had allowed them to ignore. The one she had watched vanish without raising her voice. Later that night, I walked the hallway alone. Madison's door was cracked. I heard her whispering on the phone. Panicked. Probably talking to her father. Probably getting voicemail. Probably beginning to understand that the fallback was gone. That the floor she stood on wasn't concrete. It was my shoulders. And I wasn't holding it up anymore. By the weekend, the energy had changed. Less tension. More avoidance. No one argued. No one protested. No one even asked. But the message was clear. They were waiting for the system to reboot. Waiting for me to snap out of it. To resume. To forgive without conditions. But I had nothing left to resume. I had nothing left to give without acknowledgement. Because something had shifted in me. And it wasn't anger. It was gravity. The kind that pulls everything back into balance once you stop interfering. The kind that reveals what's real when the scaffolding falls away. The house was quieter now. Not empty, but quiet. And in that quiet, I finally heard myself again.